Inside the cold, vaulted chamber of the Elari High Council, the air thickens with unease as they observe footage of a human warship entering their space. The humans' brutal, precise attack defies every prediction. Alien dread and disbelief ripple through the council, while on the human bridge, silent tension builds like a storm. A final chilling message shatters hope. Humanity's deadly origins are no myth, and their warships carry the legacy of a death world. Power shifts irreversibly as an ancient galactic order trembles. The room was vast, almost cathedral-like, with walls that pulsed faintly with bioluminescent veins of pale blue. At its center, the Elari High Council sat in a semicircle, their many eyes fixed on the holoscreen suspended midair. The projection flickered, revealing grainy images of a single massive vessel cutting through the void. A human warship. The room was silent except for the whispered hum of distant engines and the faint clicks of ocular adjustments. The images showed the vessel's brutal elegance, black, angular, scarred by battle, but exuding unyielding strength. It wasn't just a ship, it was a statement, an echo of a world where only the relentless survive. Analysis, Lieutenant Karin. The council elder's voice was sharp, tinged with disbelief. Karin's compound eyes darted rapidly as her mind processed data streams. The vessel's hull is composed of layered alloys, unlike anything catalogued, adaptive nanoweave with reactive camouflage. Their energy weapons operate in pulses that disrupt our shields at the molecular level. They employ localized EMP fields, but rather than disabling systems, these fields momentarily disable organic neural interfaces, leaving our pilots vulnerable. A murmur rippled through the council. Precarious, one whispered. Savage, another breathed. Before them, the holoscreen shifted, now showing the human warship unleashing a barrage on an Elari reconnaissance drone. The explosion was violent, a blur of fire and disintegrated metal. The drone's remnants drifted silently as if the void itself mourned. "How can they wield such technology?" another voice asked, trembling with barely concealed fear. "They were supposed to be primitive, stranded on an inhospitable death world. Why has no one told us this?" The eldest counselor slammed a clawed fist on the armrest. "Because we chose to believe in myths, stories to justify our conquest, our superiority. We thought their world was barren, their people fragile." Outside the chamber, in the black silence of space, the human warship coasted without a single sound, sensors humming softly beneath its scarred plating. Inside the bridge, Commander Ilara stood rigid, her gaze fixed on the viewport where distant stars glimmered cold and indifferent. No chatter, no panic, just the soft clack of her boots on the metallic floor. The first officer approached, voice low. "They're tracking us. Multiple vessels converging. Scanners suggest they're preparing for combat." Ilara's eyes narrowed. "Let them come." The crew shifted, each soldier carrying the weight of a history forged on a planet where death was the teacher and survival the lesson. Here, in the silent vacuum, they were more than warriors. They were the living proof of a world where only the relentless endured. Suddenly, the ship's comm crackled with static, then a voice, cold, hard, unmistakably human, broke the silence. "This is Earth Command. You will stand down or face extinction." The council chamber shattered into chaos. The projected image flickered to a countdown overlay, ominous and unyielding. 10 seconds until a salvo would tear. Through the galaxy's complacency, Karin's voice trembled. "Why are they like this? What bred such merciless resolve?" A silence followed, heavy and suffocating, broken only by the cold finality of a single line transmitted back. "We did not survive by mercy. We survive by being the last." The story plunges deeper into the brutal origin of humanity on the Deathworld. Called Ashara Prime, a planet where endless storms and lethal predators shaped human evolution. On board the warship Aegis, Commander Ilara reflects on humanity's harsh past and the genetic legacy carried within their advanced technology. Meanwhile, the alien fleet scrambles to respond, but is haunted by disbelief and growing fear. The terrifying reality begins to dawn. These humans do not fight like any other species. They fight like the planet itself. The viewport of the Aegis framed the swirling chaos of Ashara Prime below, a jagged scar of thunderous storms and deep, savage oceans, where jagged mountains clawed at a perpetually grey sky. Lightning cracked through the clouds like the planet's own heartbeat. Below, twisted forests writhed with ancient predators that had hunted before recorded memory. "Home," Commander Ilara said softly, more to herself than anyone else. She turned away from the vista, her eyes reflecting the cold blue lights of the bridge console. Around her, the crew prepared silently for the looming battle, but Ilara's thoughts drifted to the harsh world that had birthed them. A death world where only the strongest survived, where mercy was a fatal weakness. Ashara Prime was no myth. It was a crucible. Captain, the science officer Dr. Kalin approached with a data slate glowing faintly in his hands. "I've compiled the latest analysis of our enemy's fleet. Their ships are faster but fragile, their tactics predictable. But we cannot underestimate their numbers," Ilara nodded. "We don't fight numbers. We fight like Asharans, like predators in a storm." The Aegis was the epitome of human military engineering, a warship built not just to survive, but to dominate. Its hull was layered with nano-weave armor that could adapt and regenerate, scars from previous battles a testament to its resilience. Its weapon systems combined old-school kinetic cannons with cutting-edge plasma pulses and localized EMP bursts, designed to cripple enemy systems and mines alike. This technology, it's more than science, Ilara said, voice low. It's history, blood and fire encoded in steel. She recalled stories from her mother, a survivor of the Asharan Death March, tales of how entire colonies were wiped out by acid storms, how flesh was torn from bone by predators that never tired, how humanity learned to harness pain, to convert fear into weaponry. We were born on a planet where the ground tried to kill us, the skies rained poison, and the nights belonged to creatures with eyes like hellfire, Ilara said. "That's why we don't flinch. That's why we fight." Back in the Elari Council chamber, panic had mutated into something darker, paralyzing disbelief. Screens flashed with frantic updates as their fleet scrambled to intercept. Councillor Tavran, his many mandibles twitching in agitation, slammed his clawed hand against the console. They should not be able to do this. Their biology alone is a contradiction. How can a species evolved on a death world wield such precision and calm? His advisor, a smaller, paler figure named Riljar, whispered, "They are not just survivors, they are predators of the void itself." Across the room, Karin's multifaceted eyes widened. "Our scouts detected the pulse weapons, but their use was surgical. It's like watching a storm harness lightning, deadly but controlled." Suddenly, an alert flashed. Multiple human boarding pods were detaching, invisible to most sensors under their electromagnetic cloaking fields. "They're coming closer," Tavran growled. "Prepare boarding defenses. Do not let them breach the Sindara." But the Sindara, the flagship of the Elari fleet, was unprepared for what came next. On the bridge of the Aegis, the first boarding party's leader, Lieutenant Joss, peered. Through his helmet's HUD at the swirling hull of the Sindara looming ahead. "We move fast and silent," he whispered. "Ghosts born from storms." Joss and his squad slipped through maintenance shafts, moving like shadows through corridors lined with iridescent alien tech, far too clean and too confident. They struck with brutal efficiency, each kill silent but savage. The aliens fought, desperately, but without the ruthlessness bred into every Asharan warrior. Joss paused beside a control panel and connected a nanotech injector, releasing swarms of microscopic machines that disabled the ship's power grid with a whisper. Systems flickered and died. "Darkness," he muttered. "Ashara taught us that darkness is survival's ally." Back on the Aegis, Ilara stood at the command console, eyes flickering with cold fire. "Deploy gravity mines. Let them feel the storm's pull." The mines were a deadly invention, born of Ashara's crushing pressure valleys, devices that warped space-time in localized fields, crushing hulls like bugs. Explosions bloomed across the Sindara's decks. The alien crew's screams echoed faintly through broken comm channels. On the alien bridge, the Council watched in horrified silence as their flagship descended into chaos. "How do they fight without fear?" whispered Karen Tavran's voice cracked. "Because their fear is sharper than ours, sharper than steel. They were forged in eternal night. They will never break." The last image on the holoscreen was a slow zoom into the Aegis's hull, battered but unyielding, like a monument carved from war itself. Ilara's voice cut through the silence of space, transmitted for all to hear. "We carry Ashara in our veins. We do not just survive the Deathworld, we rule its legacy. Let the galaxy learn fear." The transmission ended with a silence so deep it seemed to swallow stars whole, and in that silence, the galaxy's oldest assumptions shattered. As the war intensifies, Commander Ilara recalls the brutal Asharan rite of passage that forged humanity's fiercest warriors and shaped their tactical genius. Meanwhile, the Aelari scrambled to adapt, desperately trying to decode human strategy, but faltering under their own fear and prejudice. The horrors of Ashara Prime come alive through a harrowing flashback, revealing how humanity's intimate knowledge of pain, loss, and relentless adaptation creates a battle instinct far beyond alien comprehension. The chapter ends with the Aelari mounting a desperate counterstrike, only to find their best efforts crushed by humanity's unyielding will. The cold hum of the Aegis engines reverberated through the steel hull, a steady heartbeat beneath. The calm surface of chaos. Commander Ilara paced slowly, hands clasped behind her back, staring at the holographic battlefield projection hovering over the command console. The flickering dots and vectors marked lives and ships, losses and gains, but none of it truly told the story. Not yet. Her thoughts drifted far from the endless void and battles to a time etched in memory, a place no human on board would ever forget. The Asharan Deathworld. Ashara Prime was a nightmare made real, a planet whose skies were a permanent royal of ash and storms, where acid rains ate flesh and metal alike, and predators evolved into living nightmares. It was a crucible that burned away weakness, molding every human who survived into a weapon forged by pain. She remembered the trial of shadows, a ritual every Asharan youth faced to prove their worth. They were cast out into the toxic forest, labyrinth of twisting, razor-sharp flora and lurking carnivores with jaws that could crush bone like paper. For 7 days and nights, they had to survive alone, using nothing but instinct, wit, and the crude weapons their ancestors forged from death itself. Ilara had been 13. Her fingers tightened into a fist as the memory surged. The endless nights spent listening to the screams of prey and predator alike, the taste of smoke and blood, the cold bite of rain that burned skin and lungs. Every step was a battle, every breath a victory. She had seen her closest friend fall to a snapjaw, beast in the dead of night, her screams forever carved into Ilara's soul. The horror and grief had taught her the unbreakable truth. Mercy was death. That brutal lesson echoed now as she commanded her crew in the void. "Sir, new tactical reports from the Sindara." Lieutenant Joss's voice broke the reverie, tense but steady. They're regrouping after the boarding incident, deploying heavy disruptor arrays. Ilara's eyes narrowed. Predictable. They cling to their tech, their arrogance. Joss hesitated. They're trying to isolate our fleet, cut off reinforcements. That won't work, Ilara said, voice cold. Ashara taught us to be shadows, to be everywhere and nowhere. We don't just attack, we hunt. Back in the Aelari war room, the panic was turning to desperation. The Council's great chamber, once a bastion of cold logic, was now thick with fear and dissent. Screens flickered with fragmented sensor data and damaged drone feeds. Aelari officers barked orders in a futile attempt to control the unraveling. Chaos. Councillor Tavran paced angrily. They fight like demons, but this is not magic, it's strategy. We must understand their methods. Karin, pale and exhausted, shook her head. Their tactics evolve mid-battle. We see patterns, but they adapt faster than we can process. It's like they read the battlefield's pulse. Riljar's thin lips curled into a snarl. Or maybe their battlefield is Ashara itself. Their minds are shaped by death. Their instincts sharpened on the edge of extinction. The thought sent a chill through the council chamber. No species had ever been so shaped by a death world. Until now. Meanwhile, aboard the Aegis, Ilara convened her war council in the strategy room, a stark chamber lined with holodisplays and data streams. The crew gathered, soldiers, scientists, tacticians, each hardened by battle, but united by the same grim resolve. Dr. Kalen, the science officer, tapped a projection into focus, detailed schematics of alien vessels, weapon signatures, and shield frequencies. Despite their advanced technology, their ships have critical weaknesses in their energy matrix, Kalen said. Our EMP pulses are effective, but must be carefully targeted to avoid disrupting our own systems. Lieutenant Joss leaned forward. We can use cloaked boarding pods to exploit that. We hit their ships where it hurts, their neural links, and command systems. Ilara nodded approvingly. Like ghosts in the storm, the room fell silent as each person considered the grim task ahead. Then Ilara spoke, voice steady, but heavy with history. Our ancestors didn't survive Ashara by chance. They survived by embracing pain, loss, and chaos. We fight like the Deathworld taught us, with calculated fury and unwavering will. This is no mere battle. It is our legacy. A hush fell over the room, each soul steeling itself for the inevitable. Her mind drifted back again, this time to the legendary story of the Silent Hunt, an ancient Asharan tactic still encoded in human combat doctrine. The Silent Hunt was a maneuver where the hunted became the hunter. Predators would use the planet's storms and terrain to mask movement, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. The hunter did not reveal itself until the last possible second. It was a dance of death that required patience, cunning, and unyielding resolve. Ilara's breath caught as she remembered the first time she executed the maneuver during her training. A tactical ambush in the toxic marshes that had left Even. Her instructors in stunned silence. That same instinct now guided the Aegis. Suddenly, alarms screamed across the Aegis. Multiple Aelari vessels were converging on their position, led by the Sindara flagship, their intent clear. Annihilate the human warship before reinforcements could arrive. Ilara's eyes flashed steel. Battle stations. Prepare for boarding defense. The ship's corridors became a chaotic ballet of soldiers, readying plasma rifles and nanotech grenades. The Aegis was a fortress in space, but it was the people aboard who were the real weapon. Lieutenant, Joss's boarding party, cloaked in electromagnetic silence, pierced the outer hull of the Sindara once more. Their mission, cripple command and sow chaos. Inside the alien ship, pandemonium reigned. The Sindara's bridge was a scene of frantic movement and frantic orders. The Aelari captain barked, struggling to maintain control as systems failed one by one. Contain the breach, seal the corridors. The captain's voice cracked with desperation, but the humans fought with a ferocity that was both strategic and primal, each move a calculated strike born from centuries of survival on Ashara's merciless surface. One by one, the alien crew fell. The Sindara began to fracture, its energy matrix destabilizing. Back on the Aegis, Ilara watched the battle unfold on the tactical holoscreen. The human fleet pressed the advantage, exploiting every weakness. Yet even as victory seemed within reach, Ilara's voice was a warning. Do not underestimate their resolve. Ashara bred killers, yes, but it also bred survivors. They will not surrender. Her words were prophetic. Suddenly, a new threat appeared. A squadron of alien stealth fighters emerged from a nearby nebula, their engines burning blue and silent. Incoming! The tactical officer shouted. Ilara's hands flew over controls. Deploy countermeasures. Brace for impact. The battle escalated as explosions bloomed in the void and the Aegis rocked under enemy fire. Ilara felt the weight of her ancestors' legacy heavy on her shoulders. They were the children of death itself, shaped by endless storms, sharpened by unrelenting struggle, and they would not be broken. The void seemed to close in around the Aegis as it bore the brunt of the Ilari counterattack. Deep space, once a cold expanse of stars and silence, had become a crucible where ancient instincts clashed against calculated alien precision. Every second stretched taut, like a wire about to snap. Commander Ilara stood resolute in the command deck, her eyes scanning the array of tactical feeds as alarms blared warnings through the hull. Her mind was sharp, despite the adrenaline hammering in her chest. Every loss, every victory, was a thread woven into the greater tapestry of survival, one that stretched back to a planet no other species dared approach, Ashara Prime. Though the Aegis shields flickered and faltered, Ilara's voice cut through, the chaos steady and clear. Maintain formation, focus on shielding the engineering bay. We can't lose power or this fight is over. Around her, the crew worked like parts of a living machine. Soldiers loaded weapons, engineers rerouted, energy, medics prepared for the inevitable. Yet beneath the surface of this military ballet was something else, something primal. The humans aboard Aegis carried in their blood the memories of their homeworld, a planet where death was the rule, not the exception. On Ashara Prime, survival was the only currency of value, and every human here was forged in its fires. Ilara's thoughts drifted to the message she'd received just before the engagement. An encrypted transmission from Ashara's Defense Council. A reminder of why they fought. A beacon of raw truth hidden in words. Remember who you are, the message began. Children of a Deathworld, where the storms bite harder than claws, and the silence is broken only by the screams of the fallen. You do not fight to conquer, you fight to endure. The words had stirred something in Ilara's soul, a promise and a warning all at once. Suddenly, the ship lurched violently, throwing crew members to the floor. The tactical feed blinked red as an enemy disruptor barrage hit the Aegis's aft section. Shields failing. Secondary hull breach detected, shouted Lieutenant Joss, rushing to report damage. Ilara's jaw clenched. Divert all auxiliary power to the aft shields. Send damage control teams immediately. The crackling voice of the chief engineer echoed. Commander, the reactor is fluctuating. We've stabilized for now, but I don't know how long. A cold silence settled for a moment, as if the entire ship held its breath. It was then that Ilara's second-in-command, Captain Rena Salas, approached with grim news. Commander, the Ilari are regrouping. They've launched a boarding assault on our starboard flank. They're targeting the medbay. Ilara's heart tightened. The medbay was a sanctuary on the Aegis, a place where the wounded found refuge. Losing it would mean losing more than just equipment. It would mean broken morale. Prepare counterboarding squads, Ilara ordered, voice steely. We protect the medbay at all costs. As soldiers armed themselves, Ilara's mind flickered to a memory from Ashara Prime, her first real battle against the Asharan wilds, where the stakes were the same: protect the weak or perish. In the shadowed jungle of Ashara's toxic forests, a group of young warriors, barely older than children, had been ambushed by a pack of razor-toothed predators. Their survival depended on forming a circle, defending the wounded and the weak against the onslaught. It was a brutal lesson in unity and sacrifice. Her comm crackled. Commander, boarding pods detected. Hostiles breaching hull integrity on starboard corridor 7. Ilara didn't hesitate. Seal bulkheads. Deploy automated turrets and bio-nets. The corridors of the Aegis became a deadly maze. Streaks of blue and red plasma lit the smoke-filled halls as human defenders met alien invaders in fierce close quarters combat. The sound of gunfire was punctuated by the hiss of energy blades and the cries of pain. In one narrow passage, Sergeant Miko, a veteran of countless skirmishes, fought with ruthless precision. Ilari soldiers surged forward, confident in their advanced weapons, but Miko moved with a cold fury that no technology could match. His every strike was a reminder of Ashara's unforgiving lessons. Pain was a teacher, and death a constant companion. Nearby, the medbay's atmosphere was thick with tension. The medical team worked tirelessly to save the wounded, their hands steady despite the growing danger. Dr. Lyra, the chief medic, met Ilara's gaze as the commander arrived. "We're holding for now," Lyra said, voice tired but resolute. "But if they break through, the casualties will be catastrophic." Ilara nodded. "Then we make sure they don't." Back on the bridge, the tactical officer reported another threat. Ilari reinforcements detected on the horizon. "They're deploying heavy artillery drones armed with gravity mines." Ilara frowned. Gravity mines were devastating weapons, fields that warped space itself, crushing anything caught within like a vice. "We don't have time to evacuate," Ilara muttered. "Activate the nanotech dispersers. Prepare EMP countermeasures." The nanotech dispersers, microscopic machines designed to neutralize electronic systems, were humanity's secret weapon against alien technology. When unleashed, they swarmed enemy ships, disabling shields and disrupting weapon systems from within. The Aegis shuddered as the drones advanced. Then, in a coordinated strike, the dispersers launched. Tiny machines infiltrated the drones. Circuits, sending them into uncontrolled spirals. Explosions rippled through space, lighting the darkness with violent blooms of fire. For a moment, victory seemed within reach. But then the worst happened. A deafening explosion rocked the Aegis. As a gravity mine detonated dangerously close to the hull, the ship groaned, alarms wailing as systems overloaded. Ilara gritted her teeth. Damage report. The response was grim. Multiple systems offline, including critical life support modules in lower decks. She clenched her fists. "Divert all power to life support. We'll survive this." Her comm beeped again, a distorted voice, faint but unmistakable. "Commander Ilara," it said, a voice she recognized with icy clarity. "This is Ashara Prime Command. We've received intel on Ilari reinforcements en route. You are not alone." Relief and determination surged through her. "Copy that," Ilara replied, voice steady. "We hold the line." On the bridge, the holographic displays shifted as new vessels emerged from the nebula. Human warships bearing the scars of countless battles, but undeterred. Reinforcements from Ashara Prime had arrived. The Aegis crew let out a collective breath, but the fight was far from over. Ilara's mind drifted once more to the Asharan rite of sacrifice, the moment when warriors would offer themselves to the planet's deadly storms, betting their lives on their ability to survive. It was a test not just of strength, but of spirit. "We are those warriors," she said aloud. "The Deathworld made us strong. The galaxy will learn to fear what we have become." As the Aegis rallied with newfound energy, the Alari forces faltered, their attacks growing disorganized. But even in the face of adversity, the enemy's fear bred recklessness. The captain's voice on the comm crackled urgently. "Commander, the Alari flagship is initiating a retreat. They cannot hold against your forces." Ilara's gaze hardened. "Do not let them escape. Pursue and disable their engines." The chase through the void was brutal. Explosions and debris littered the dark space like dying stars. The Aegis and its allies pressed hard, relentless and merciless. Finally, the crippled Alari flagship drifted, engines dead, surrender imminent. Ilara's voice came over the comm, cold and clear. "You underestimated us. You mistook our pain for weakness. You judged us by the worlds we came from." A silence followed. Then the human commander's voice, low and chilling. "You were wrong. The war was far from over." But the galaxy had witnessed a new force, born of death, tempered by sacrifice, and unwilling to bow. The Aegis and its crew braced themselves for the battles ahead. The legacy of Ashara Prime was not just survival, it was dominance, and humanity was ready to reclaim its place among the stars. The stars outside the Aegis shimmered cold and indifferent, a distant backdrop to the storm brewing inside the ship. The taste of victory still lingered, but it was sharp, edged with blood and sacrifice. Commander Ilara paced the command deck, her mind a battlefield as much as the void beyond. The crippled Alari flagship floated like a carcass in space, a reminder that the war was no longer a distant threat, but a brutal reality. But Ilara knew the fight had only just begun. Reinforcements were already en route, and every moment mattered. Her second-in-command, Captain Rena Salas, stepped forward, her expression tight with worry. "Commander, the engineers report critical damage to the aft propulsion systems. We'll need at least 6 hours to restore full capability." Ilara's eyes narrowed. 6 hours is an eternity in a battle like this? Rena nodded grimly. "We'll manage. But I advise caution. We can't afford another direct confrontation until repairs are complete." Ilara turned away, her gaze drifting to the viewport, where the shattered remnants of the Alari flagship gleamed coldly in the darkness. She saw not just the enemy, but the memories of Ashara Prime, the violent storms, the shattered landscapes, and the relentless fight to survive. A message chimed softly at her console, drawing her attention. It was from Dr. Marek, the ship's chief scientist. "Commander, I have updates on the nanotech dispersers. Preliminary analysis shows potential for a new adaptive mode, something that could turn the tide." Ilara's pulse quickened. The nanotech had already saved them once. Could this be the edge they needed? "Bring Dr. Marek to the bridge," she ordered. Moments later, Marek appeared, his face pale but animated with excitement. "We're developing a new protocol," he explained. "Right now, the nanotech dispersers are effective, but they operate on a fixed algorithm. If we implement adaptive AI, the dispersers could respond in real time to enemy countermeasures, evolving to bypass their defenses." Ilara leaned forward, the promise of power humming beneath the weight of responsibility. "How soon can this be operational?" "Not fast enough for this battle, but within days, possibly hours, if we prioritize." Rena exchanged a glance with Ilara. "We'll need every advantage. The Alari won't stop." Ilara nodded. "Prepare the science teams. I want a full report every hour." As Marek left, Ilara's thoughts were interrupted by a new alarm. "Incoming transmission from Ashara Prime Command," the comm officer announced. Ilara activated the feed. The screen flickered, revealing the harsh, weather-beaten face of General Eric Thorne, legendary Asharan war hero and architect of humanity's space defenses. "Commander Ilara, No, Thorne's voice was gravelly but commanding. We've secured a forward base near the Perseus Rift. Reinforcements are ready, but intelligence indicates a new Elari weapon, a gravity wave cannon capable of devastating entire fleets. Ilara's stomach tightened. Gravity wave weapons were nightmares, capable of tearing space itself. We'll need to strike before they bring it online, she said. Thorne nodded. Agreed. I'm dispatching a strike team to assist. The gravity wave cannon was a terrifying escalation, a weapon designed to undo the very fabric of reality. It was the kind of threat that made the harshness of Ashara Prime feel almost merciful. Ilara stood, eyes blazing. Then we destroy it before it can fire. The bridge became a hive of preparation. Tactical officers plotted the strike route through the asteroid belt surrounding the Perseus Rift, where the Elari had hidden their secret weapon under layers of gravitational interference. Lieutenant Joss briefed the team. Our approach will be stealth. We'll rely on cloaking tech and nanotech dispersers to slip past enemy sensors. Ilara nodded. Prepare boarding teams. We take that cannon offline, no matter the cost. The crew moved with quiet determination. The boarding pods were loaded, weapons checked and rechecked. Soldiers exchanged glances, fear and resolve mixing. In their eyes, Ilara walked among them, her presence steadying. Remember, she said, voice low and fierce, we are the children of a Deathworld. We do not back down. Hours later, the boarding pods launched, streaking silently toward the asteroid field. Inside her pod, Ilara sat strapped in, mind focused but calm. The cold hum of the engines was a steady pulse beneath the tension. Through the viewport, the jagged asteroid surfaces loomed, shadows swallowing light. The Aegis sensors picked up faint signatures of Elari patrols, guards. Against intrusion, Ilara gripped the armrest. "Com, maintain silence, no chatter unless it's critical." The pod slipped through the dark corridors of space, weaving between massive rocks, until finally the target emerged. A cavernous asteroid hollowed out and transformed into a fortress. Its surface bristling with energy weapons and shield generators, the boarding team prepared to breach the hull. Ilara's voice was steady. "Deploy nanotech dispersers on the outer defenses. Disable their sensors first." As the dispersers swarmed, lights flickered and alarms blared within the fortress. The Elari scrambled, unprepared for the adaptive assault that gnawed at their defenses. The team breached the hull, entering a labyrinth of metallic corridors, echoing with the hiss of emergency systems. The gravity wave cannon pulsed with latent power, a monstrous machine waiting to be unleashed. "Move fast!" Ilara ordered. "We plant charges on the power conduits and disable the control core." But the Elari weren't passive victims. From the shadows emerged elite guards, their weapons crackling with energy. The boarding team met them in fierce combat, plasma bolts and blade strikes ringing through the corridors. Ilara fought with brutal efficiency, each movement a blend of Asharan's survival instinct and military discipline. The enemies advanced. Technology was deadly, but humanity's ferocity was a weapon all its own. As the battle raged, Marek's voice came over the comm. "Commander, adaptive nanotech dispersers are online. We're seeing rapid breakdowns in enemy tech, but it's also triggering defensive protocols." Ilara grimaced. "Keep pushing. We must not fail." Inside the control chamber, Ilara reached the core interface. The Elari AI was sophisticated, but vulnerable to the virus Marek's team had developed. She inserted the data spike, fingers trembling only slightly. "Virus uploaded," she reported, initiating shutdown sequence. Suddenly, the gravity wave cannon roared to life, energy crackling as it charged. "Ilara, it's firing!" a soldier shouted. The chamber shook violently as the cannon discharged, sending ripples through space-time that distorted the very air. Ilara struggled to stay upright as the shock wave rippled outward. The hull groaned, warning lights flashing. "Red, Get to the charges, she barked. We have seconds. The team sprinted, placing explosive charges along the power conduits. Seconds later, they detonated. Explosions tore through the fortress, severing power and disabling the cannon. The structure shook, corridors collapsing. Ilara's comm crackled with Marek's triumphant voice. Gravity wave cannon offline. Enemy. Systems failing. They raced back to the boarding pods, dodging debris and enemy fire. The fortress was crumbling around them. As the pods launched away, Ilara looked back at the wreckage, a bitter taste of victory settling in. They had stopped. A catastrophe, but the cost was clear. The war was escalating, and humanity's survival was still far from guaranteed. Back aboard the Aegis, the crew cheered the success, but Ilara's eyes were distant. The Deathworld had made them strong, but the galaxy was testing that strength in ways none of them had imagined. She clenched her fists. They think this will break us. They don't understand what it means to come from Ashara Prime. Her voice was a vow. We will endure. We will fight, and we will show them the true meaning of humanity. The Aegis drifted in silence near the shattered remains of the Aelari fortress. Outside, space was a cold expanse littered with debris, a graveyard to the dead weapon they had destroyed. But inside, the ship hummed with restless energy, the kind that only comes before a storm. Commander Ilara stood alone on the observation deck, staring at the swirling wreckage beyond the viewport. The gravity wave cannon's destruction was a critical victory, but it had come with a price. Aelari forces had been quick to retaliate, their next moves unpredictable and ruthless. Her thoughts were interrupted by the quiet chime of her comm. "Commander, you have an incoming secure transmission," the voice of Lieutenant Joss reported. Ilara activated the feed. A holographic image shimmered to life, General Arik Thorne's weathered face etched with exhaustion, but burning with determination. "Ilara," Thorne began, voice rough. "We intercepted enemy comms. The Aelari High Command has ordered full mobilization. They're consolidating at the Kareth system, their home front. We need to strike first." Ilara's jaw clenched. The Kareth system was heavily fortified, a core world protected by layers of orbital defenses and planetary shields. An assault there was a gamble on a scale that could change everything. "What's the intel on their defenses?" Ilara asked. "Extensive," Thorne replied. "Anti-gravity mines, layered plasma turrets, automated drones. Their new generation of warships are also rumored to be equipped with quantum cloaking tech. It's unlike anything we've faced before." A shadow of doubt flickered across Ilara's face. Quantum cloaking, an innovation that could render their senses blind. The very thought chilled her. "We'll need to adapt," she said firmly. "Gather the science teams. Marek, Rena, get your best minds working on countermeasures." Thorne's gaze softened. "This war is bigger than any of us imagined, Ilara. But remember, humanity comes from Ashara Prime. We don't back down." The transmission ended. Ilara turned to her officers, her voice carrying the weight of resolve. "Prepare the fleet for a preemptive strike on Kareth. We hit them hard and fast." Hours later, in the dim glow of the science bay, Dr. Marek pored over schematics of the Aelari warships, his brow furrowed. Around him, a team of engineers worked feverishly on experimental devices, prototypes designed to pierce the veil of the new cloaking tech. "Our current sensors can't detect the quantum phase shifts," Marek explained to Ilara and Captain Salas. "But if we tune the nanotech dispersers to emit counter-frequency pulses, we might disrupt the cloaking fields." Ilara leaned over a console, absorbing every word. "How soon can you get a prototype ready?" Marek glanced at his team. "Within 12 hours, but deployment will require precision." Rena's voice cut in. "We'll coordinate with the tactical teams. This has to be perfect." Ilara nodded. "We have no choice. The Kareth assault depends on it." Meanwhile, in the war rooms, tactical officers plotted the assault. Maps projected across holoscreens revealed the dense network of defenses protecting Kareth. Every inch was a trap. Lieutenant Joss tapped rapidly on the console. "We'll deploy stealth frigates to disable the outer minefields. The nanotech. Squads will focus on the drone swarms." Ilara's mind raced. "And the warships? We engage only after the cloaking disruption." "It's our window," Joss said. The plan was audacious, a surgical strike into the lion's den. But Ilara's instincts told her it was the only way to survive. As the fleet gathered in the staging area near the Kareth system, tension coiled like a serpent. Soldiers checked weapons, scientists calibrated equipment, and commanders reviewed every contingency. Ilara stood on the bridge, the weight of command settling on her shoulders. "Status report," she demanded. "Nanotech disperser prototypes are ready," Marek reported. "Quantum cloaking sensors calibrated. Stealth frigates deployed," Joss added. "Minefields detected and marked." Ilara's gaze swept the fleet. "Then we move." The fleet slipped through the asteroid belt surrounding Kareth, cloaked in shadows. The stealth frigates led the way, weaving among floating rocks, deploying micro-drones to disable anti-gravity mines. The silence was broken only by the occasional crackle of comms. Suddenly, sensors flared, drone swarms emerging from orbital stations, buzzing like a swarm of angry hornets. "Nanotech dispersers online," Marek's voice crackled. Deploying counter-frequency pulses, streams of nanobots surged into space, swirling like a living storm. The drones faltered, then disintegrated in bursts of sparks. Ilara allowed herself a brief smile. "Good. Keep it up." But the victory was short-lived. From the depths of Kareth's orbit, Elari warships emerged, shimmering with quantum cloaking. The fleet's sensors flickered. "Contact lost." "Commander, the cloaking disruption isn't holding," Joss warned. Ilara's pulse quickened. "Activate secondary dispersers. Full power." The Aegis and her escorts unleashed bursts of nanotech pulses, attempting to pierce the veil. The ship's hull vibrated as quantum-shrouded vessels darted through their ranks, striking with sudden, precise bursts. "Shields down to 40%, shouted the damage control officer. The battle exploded into chaos, plasma bolts streaking through space, explosions rippling across hulls. Ilara barked orders, coordinating defense while tracking enemy movements. Amid the chaos, she caught sight of a sleek Ilari flagship, its hull shimmering with an eerie blue glow. The ship moved with lethal grace, targeting the Aegis's engines. "Divert power to aft shields," she commanded. The flagship fired a concentrated plasma beam, slicing through the aft shield. The ship shuddered violently. "Damage to propulsion." "Systems severe," Rena shouted. Ilara grit her teeth. "Evasive maneuvers, full reverse thrust." The Aegis lurched, narrowly dodging another blast, but the flagship was relentless, pressing the attack. Suddenly, the flagship decloaked for a fraction of a second, revealing a terrifying sight. Grotesque, bio-engineered war machines fused to its hull, a blend of living tissue and alien technology. Ilara's stomach twisted. The Aelari were evolving their ships into something monstrous, something unholy. "Target that flagship," she ordered. "Concentrate fire." The fleet responded, plasma beams converging on the monstrous vessel, but it retaliated with brutal efficiency, launching swarms of bio-drones that tore into the fleet's hulls. Medic teams to the wounded. Ilara called, her voice steady despite the mounting carnage. Amid the turmoil, a new voice crackled over comm. The voice of a young soldier, barely more than a recruit. "Commander, this is Corporal Yanni. The boarding pod you requested is ready. We can launch a counter-strike." Ilara's eyes flashed. "Send them in. Target the flagship's control core. Disable that monstrosity." The boarding pod shot away, weaving through enemy fire. Inside, Yanni's team moved with practiced precision. Fighting through the grotesque defenses, they reached the core chamber, a pulsating mass of living metal. The controls were bioorganic interfaces, responding to touch with sickening slowness. Yanni's voice was calm but fierce. "We're planting the charges. Stand by for detonation. The pod's escape was a desperate race against time, dodging blasts and collapsing corridors. Back on the Aegis, Ilara watched the seconds tick down. The flagship's attacks intensified. Charges detonated, Yanni reported. Core offline. The monstrous flagship shuddered, its bioengineered hull convulsing, before erupting in a fireball that lit up the darkness. A collective cheer rose from the fleet, but Ilara's relief was tempered by loss. Several ships had fallen, and the Karith system remained a dangerous place. She turned to Marek. "Prepare for evacuation protocols. This battle isn't over." Marek nodded, weary but resolute. "We will adapt, Commander. We always do." Ilara's gaze hardened. "Then we keep fighting for Ashara Prime, for humanity." As the fleet withdrew from the shattered battlefield, Ilara allowed herself a moment of reflection. They had faced horrors born of Deathworld savagery, and yet the galaxy still underestimated them. The war was far from over, but humanity's fire burned brighter than any star. In the cold vastness of space, one truth remained clear. They were survivors. Warriors forged in the crucible of a death world, and their warships were living proof. The shattered remnants of the Aelari fleet burned like dying stars in the cold void of space. Below, the planet Karith, once a fortress of alien arrogance, lay exposed, its defenses broken, its people shaken. And above it all, the Aegis and her battered human fleet held the battered line, scars of battle etched deep into every hull. Commander Ilara stood on the bridge, the weight of countless lives pressing upon her shoulders. Around her the hum of systems was quieter now, the desperate fury of war fading to an exhausted lull, yet her heart thundered with a grim certainty. "This is it," she murmured, almost to herself. "The end game." Behind her, Dr. Marek and Captain Salas exchanged glances. The science team had uncovered something disturbing during the last engagement, a hidden protocol in the Aelari command network, a fail-safe weapon so terrible, so primal, it could end not only this war, but annihilate an entire system. Marek's voice was tight. "They call it the death pulse, a wave of concentrated graviton distortion that would collapse planetary cores. If triggered, it would obliterate Karith and everyone on it, including us if we don't act fast." Ilara clenched her fists. "They'd rather destroy their homeworld than let us win." Salas looked to her. "We don't have much time. Their command node is on the surface. We need a ground team to disable it." "Then we take it," Ilara said without hesitation. "I'll lead the strike." The battle-weary crew prepared for one final descent. The human warships, born from the crucible of a death world, would not surrender. Not now. Not ever. The A dropship pierced Karith's atmosphere, burning streaks of fire trailing behind it as it plunged toward the scarred surface below. The ground forces moved swiftly, shadows slipping through twisted ruins where alien defenders lay in wait. Ilara's voice was steady, though her pulse hammered. "Stay sharp. The Aelari will fight to the last." Explosions echoed across the horizon, plasma flares lighting the twilight. Yet humanity's soldiers pressed onward, driven by the memory of their harsh homeworld, the unforgiving crucible of Ashara Prime, where only the strongest survived. Suddenly, alarms blared. Sensors detected a surge. The death pulse activation had begun. "Move faster," Ilara ordered. "We don't have minutes, we have seconds." They burst into the command bunker, walls pulsing with alien energy. The core console glowed with terrible power, graviton emitters humming, ready to tear the planet apart. Ilara rushed forward, fingers flying over the alien interface, a living mesh of biometal and circuitry. Her mind raced to decode its patterns. The scientist training fighting alongside the soldier's instincts. "Disarming, disarming," she whispered, sweat dripping down her brow. Behind her, Salas and Marek covered the team, fending off the last desperate defenders. A surge of energy pulsed from the core, throwing Alara to the floor. Pain shot through her, but she forced herself up. "Almost there," she said through gritted teeth. Then the console sparked violently, and a cold, chilling voice echoed through the chamber, a distorted Alari AI, its tone laced with defeat and menace. "You cannot stop what is inevitable. Deathworlds breed only extinction." Ilara met the voice with a steady glare, standing taller despite the searing pain. "No, Deathworlds breed survival, and humanity is proof. Deathworlds breed survival, and humanity is proof." With one final command, she severed the core's power lines. The graviton hum died. Silence. Outside, the sky cleared, stars shining anew. Kareth breathed again. Back aboard the Aegis, Ilara collapsed into her chair, exhaustion overwhelming, but tempered by a fierce pride. Marek approached, weary but smiling. "You did it, Commander. We all did," Salas added. "Humanity's warships weren't just machines. They were extensions of our will, our strength. Born from Deathworlds, yes, but thriving because of it." Ilara nodded slowly. "We fought, not just for survival, but for recognition. The galaxy can no longer mistake us for primitives. We are the storm they feared." Her eyes scanned the stars beyond the viewport, infinite, unknowable, and yet now a little less hostile. The galaxy had been tested, and humanity had emerged unbroken. As the fleet set course for home, a new resolve burned in every human heart. They were children of a brutal deathworld, tempered by fire, forged by sacrifice. Their warships carried that legacy, silent testimonies to their strength, and in the dark between stars, a quiet promise whispered among the ruins of old fear. Humanity would not just survive, they would conquer.